I came home early. His first mistake was assuming I wouldn't. I was supposed to be gone until Sunday, a work trip, one of the many I'd taken over the years. He had kissed me goodbye at the airport, told me he'd miss me, even texted a few sweet messages after I landed. But flights change, schedules shift, and tonight, I walked through the front door 12 hours ahead of schedule. The house was quiet. Too quiet. His car was in the driveway. The lights were dimmed, just the faint glow from the living room spilling into the hallway. A half-empty whiskey glass sat on the coffee table, and the faintest scent of perfume, not mine, lingered in the air. I moved upstairs, my footsteps light, silent. Our bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it, heart pounding. The bed was made. The sheets were fresh, but something felt off. That's when I saw it. A single gold earring, gleaming against the hardwood floor near the nightstand. I reached down, picked it up. It wasn't mine. A chill crawled up my spine. I stood still, listening. The distant hum of the air conditioning. The occasional creak of the house settling. But underneath it all, a presence. Like something was watching me. I swallowed the rising nausea and placed the earring on the nightstand. Maybe it belonged to a friend, I told myself. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Dash. A feeling deeper than logic, more ancient than reason, whispered that this was something. I needed to find out what. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay beside him, listening to his even breathing, my mind spinning. He felt warm, familiar, like the man I had trusted with my life. And yet, that small piece of gold on the floor had shattered something I couldn't put back together. Morning came. I got up first, moving through the motions of our routine. Coffee, breakfast, casual conversation. I studied him. The way he scrolled through his phone. The way he kissed my cheek before stepping out for work. I almost convinced myself I was paranoid. Almost. I waited for the garage door to shut before heading upstairs. My hands were steady as I pulled open his nightstand drawer. My breath shallow as I sifted through papers, receipts, old books. Nothing. Then, an idea. I reached behind the bookshelf, fingers grazing the edge of something smooth, metallic. A small, unfamiliar object lodged between the wood and the wall. I pulled it out. A recording device. My hands turned ice cold. My stomach twisted. Why the hell was there a hidden camera in my bedroom? My chest tightened as I rushed to my laptop, plugging in the device with shaking fingers. A folder popped up on the screen. It was labeled Playback. I clicked it open. Dozens of video files, all labeled with dates. All recorded on nights I had been out of town. I felt my pulse in my throat as I clicked the most recent one. The screen flickered. And then I saw him, my husband, bringing another woman into our bedroom. She was blonde, younger, wearing a red dress that barely covered anything. They were laughing, stumbling, their hands all over each other. He pushed her onto the bed, kissed her the way he used to kiss me. And then I slammed the laptop shut. My heartbeat roared in my ears. This was real. This was happening. I forced myself to reopen the laptop, clicked another video, then another. Different women, different nights, every single time I was away. It wasn't just one mistake. It wasn't one drunken lapse in judgment. This was deliberate, repeated, planned. I sat there, my body numb, staring at the man I thought I knew. He had no idea I was watching, and he had no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't confront him right away. That would be too easy. He had been careful, smart, calculated. Now it was my turn. I closed the laptop and took a deep, measured breath. I needed to be smarter. I forced a smile when he came home, acted normal, pretended everything was fine. We had dinner, we laughed, we talked about our days. He kissed my forehead before bed, whispering, "I love you." I whispered it back, even though I wanted to rip his throat out. The next day, I started planning. Step 1, let him think everything is normal. I cooked his favorite meals, let him hold me, made love to him like nothing was wrong. He had no idea that every second, every touch was setting the stage for his downfall. Step 2, get the proof I need. The hidden camera had only given me a glimpse. I needed more. I installed my own cameras. Not hidden, no, deliberate. Right where they could capture everything, where he wouldn't even think to look. Step 3, gather allies. I reached out to them, the women. Some knew he was married, some didn't, but all of them hated him now. That was what I needed. Hatred fuels revenge. Step 4, give him one last chance to destroy himself. I told him I had another work trip, just like always. His eyes lit up. I kissed him goodbye, smiled sweetly, rolled my suitcase to the car. But this time, I didn't leave. I parked 2 blocks away. Waited. 3 hours later, another car pulled into the driveway. Another woman. Another night of betrayal. I watched from the shadows, my heart steady. He thought he was untouchable. But tonight I was coming back early. And he was never going to see it coming. I waited in the dark. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood. The air smelled of expensive cologne and cheap perfume, a sickening combination that made my stomach turn. Upstairs, I could hear them. The muffled sound of laughter, the low hum of music, the unmistakable rustling of sheets. He thought I was miles away, but I was right here. I gripped my phone, fingers tight around the cold edges. A single tap of my screen, and everything would be set in motion. The plan I had been perfecting for weeks was ready. This wasn't just about catching him. It wasn't about screaming or crying or demanding answers. I already had my answer. This was about ruining him. A glass shattered upstairs, more laughter, more movement. My pulse was steady, no fear, no second thoughts. He had no idea that the woman he had been betraying for years was about to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. I stepped forward, silent as a ghost, disappearing into the shadows of my own home. The bedroom door was closed, locked. He thought that was enough. It wasn't. I had planned for this, every detail. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small black remote I had installed earlier that week. A simple push of a button, and the locks on every door and window in the house sealed shut. He wasn't leaving, neither was she. Not until I was finished. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. The muffled sound of sheets shifting, the deep rumble of his voice, the soft, breathy laughter of the stranger in my bed. The same routine, every time. I let them have their moment. Then I tapped my phone again. The speakers in the bedroom came to life. A loud, distorted noise, like the crackle of an old radio tuning into a station. The sound made them stop. Silence. Then his voice, panicked. "What the hell was that?" The girl laughed nervously. "Is that normal?" "Hold on," he muttered. I could hear the bed shift, the sound of feet hitting the floor. I stayed in the hallway waiting. Then my voice echoed through the speakers. "Good evening." Silence. "What the fuck?" His voice was sharper now. "Having a good time?" My voice continued, smooth and controlled. "I hope so. Because it's your last." A thud. I pictured him reaching for his phone, trying to call someone. It wouldn't work. I had cut everything. No Wi-Fi, no service, no way to reach the outside world. The girl let out a nervous laugh. This is a joke, right?" I stepped closer to the door, close enough to hear his breathing pick up. "Lisa?" His voice was different now, tight, afraid. I smiled. "Surprised?" I hit another button. The lights in the bedroom flickered off. A second later, the TV screen in the room glowed to life. And then, the footage started playing. There was no escaping it. Every movement, every moan, every whisper, playing on loop for him and his latest conquest to see. The first video showed him with a woman I recognized, a coworker. The next one, a random stranger. Another. His entire history of lies, stitched together in full color and high definition. I waited outside the door, listening. The girl let out a sharp gasp. "Oh my God, that's you." "Turn it off," he barked. "You told me you were single," she shrieked. He was panicking now, moving, trying to figure out a way to make this stop. But it wouldn't stop. Not until I said so. I leaned against the door, letting the moment sink in. "You thought you were smart," I said, my voice still coming through the speakers. "Thought you could do this over and over again without consequences." "Lisa!" His voice was frantic now. "Let's talk about this." I clicked another button. Gas seeped into the room. Not lethal, not dangerous, but strong enough to make them weak. I heard coughing, the sound of bodies hitting the floor, and then nothing. When I stepped into the room, it was like stepping into the scene of a crime. He was on the floor, barely conscious. She was next to him, curled in on herself. The air smelled faintly of chemicals, the kind that made people lose time. I wasn't worried about her. She was just a casualty. He was my target. I moved across the room, slow, deliberate, pulled the chair from the corner and sat down in front of him. He blinked up at me, dazed. I gave him a sweet smile. "Good morning, sweetheart." His hands twitched. He tried to move, but his wrists were bound. The realization hit him all at once. He was tied to the bed. I watched as he struggled, every ounce of arrogance draining from his face. "Lisa," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "You're crazy." "Maybe," I admitted, "but at least I'm not a liar." I picked up the remote. He flinched. The TV flashed to a new screen. A live feed, broadcasted to everyone. His work, his friends, his family. And then, the final blow. The screen showed his mother's number. "One button," I said, tilting my head, "and she sees everything." His face turned white. "Lisa, please, sign the divorce papers." His whole body stiffened. "What?" "You heard me?" I pulled out the neatly stacked documents from my bag. "Sign them, or your mother gets a front row seat to what a piece of shit you really are." His breathing was ragged now. I could see his mind racing, trying to find a way out. There wasn't one. He looked at the papers, then at the screen. His hands were shaking. "You have 3 seconds." I pressed the button. The phone started dialing. He grabbed the pen, signed his name fast. I snatched the papers, tucking them into my bag. "See? That wasn't so hard." His eyes burned into me. "You're gonna regret this." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Regret what?" I gestured around the room. "Freeing myself?" He said nothing, just glared. I leaned in close, inches from his face. "You're lucky I let you walk away with your life." He swallowed hard. I stood up, glancing at the trembling woman still on the floor. "You can keep him," I said lightly. "He's yours now." Then I turned, walked to the door, and left without looking back. By the time he woke up the next morning, I was gone. The house? Mine. The money? Mine. His reputation? Shattered. I left a final note on his nightstand. I hope it was worth it. And as I walked away, stepping into my new life, I smiled. Because this wasn't heartbreak. This was justice. He woke up to the sound of ice-cold water splashing across his face. He gasped, coughing, his body jerking against the restraints. His eyes flew open, wild and disoriented, darting around the dimly lit room. The sheets beneath him were damp, clinging to his skin. I sat in the chair across from him, watching. He blinked rapidly, trying to process, trying to understand why he was tied to our bed like a hostage. "Lisa?" he croaked, his voice hoarse. "What the—" I crossed one leg over the other, tilting my head. "Good morning, sweetheart." His breathing hitched. He pulled at his wrists, but the zip ties didn't budge. He was completely at my mercy, and he knew it. "Lisa?" he tried again, swallowing hard. "What the hell is this?" I reached for the remote on the nightstand, tapping a button. The TV flickered back to life. His body tensed. The footage played, again and again and again. Different nights, different women. Same betrayal, same disgusting, gut-wrenching lies. I turned my attention back to him, watching as his face shifted from anger to horror. "Please," he rasped. "Lisa, let's just talk." I raised a hand, cutting him off. "Talk?" I echoed, a humorless laugh slipping from my lips. "Oh, we'll talk. But first, I want you to watch." His jaw clenched as he forced himself to look at the screen, watching himself move through every dirty secret he thought he had buried. The air in the room was thick, heavy. He looked at me then, his blue eyes pleading. "Baby, Don't." My voice was sharp, slicing through the room like a blade. "Don't baby me, don't lie, don't insult me." He was quiet for a long moment. His breathing was uneven, his mind scrambling for a way out. There wasn't one. I leaned forward, elbows resting on my knees. "You were careful," I said softly, my tone almost admiring. "I'll give you that. You covered your tracks well. No lipstick stains, no perfume on your clothes. You even deleted your texts, but you made one mistake." He swallowed. "Lisa, you underestimated me." He flinched. I tapped the remote again, and the video stopped. The screen went dark. Silence swallowed the room whole. His jaw was tight, his body still tense. "You did this to yourself," I continued, standing up slowly. "And now, you're going to pay." His entire face hardened, his breathing steadied, and just like that, the fear was gone. I knew this side of him, the manipulator, the man who always found a way to talk his way out of anything. He sat up straighter, exhaling through his nose. "Okay," he said, his voice stronger now. "You got your little revenge moment. You tied me up, you showed me some videos. What now, huh? You gonna kill me?" He smirked. That fucking smirk. Like this was all a game. I smiled back, tilting my head. "Kill you?" I echoed, stepping closer. No, that would be too easy." I let the words hang between us, let him wonder what was coming next. Then I reached into the drawer and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I placed them on his lap. He looked down, then back up at me. "What is this?" he muttered. "Divorce papers," I said simply. His face twisted, like the idea had never even crossed his mind. Like he had never expected me to actually leave him. His fingers curled into fists. "You're fucking insane." I shrugged. "Maybe, but at least I'm not a cheater." I pulled a pen from my back pocket and tossed it onto his lap. "Sign them." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "And if I don't?" I smiled. Tapped the remote again. A new screen flashed to life. A live feed, not just any live feed. This was streaming directly to everyone who mattered in his life. His boss, his coworkers, his family, his friends, and most importantly, his mother. I clicked another button. The phone number of his mother appeared on the screen, a single button away from dialing. His face drained of all color. "Lisa," he whispered, a new kind of fear creeping into his voice. "You wouldn't—" I raised my brows. "Wouldn't I?" He swallowed. His whole body was trembling now. I let my finger hover over the button. "You have 3 seconds," I said calmly. He panicked. His fingers grabbed the pen so fast it nearly flew out of his hands. He scrawled his signature across the page, his breathing erratic, his skin clammy. The moment the ink dried, I snatched the papers from his lap. I exhaled. "See?" I said, slipping them into my bag. That wasn't so hard. He was seething. His body shook with rage, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might break. "You're gonna regret this," he hissed. I laughed. "Regret what?" I asked. "Leaving you?" I bent down until I was eye level with him, close enough that I could smell the panic rolling off of him in waves. "You should be grateful, really," I whispered, "because this is mercy." His jaw twitched. He said nothing. I pulled back, stepping away from the bed, and then I turned to the woman still curled in the corner of the room, her eyes wide and horrified. I gave her a sweet smile. "You can keep him," I said lightly. "He's your problem now." Then I picked up my bag and walked out. I didn't look back, didn't pause, didn't give him another second of my life. By the time he woke up the next morning, I was gone. The house, mine. The money, mine. His reputation, destroyed. And when he finally stumbled out into the real world, humiliated, ruined, with nowhere to turn, I hoped he would remember. I hoped he would remember exactly what happened. When he betrayed the wrong woman, the world knew now. By morning, it was everywhere. Screenshots, video clips, headlines that spread like wildfire. CEO caught in scandal. Wife exposes infidelity in live broadcast. Business tycoon's dirty secrets leaked. Ex-wife's savage revenge. Man loses everything after cheating on his wife. Watch the video here. I sat in my office, sipping my coffee, scrolling through the chaos I had unleashed. His reputation, destroyed. His career, gone. His entire social circle, laughing at him. The company had already released a statement. "We take ethics very seriously and are currently reviewing allegations against one of our executives. Effective immediately, he has been placed on indefinite leave." Indefinite leave. That was corporate talk for, "We're firing him, but we need to clean up the mess first." I smirked, refreshed the newsfeed, and leaned back in my chair. He had spent years building this perfect little illusion. The devoted husband, the successful businessman, the trustworthy leader. And in less than 12 hours, I had ripped it all away. I got up, stretched, and moved to the window, looking down at the city below. Somewhere out there, he was watching everything fall apart. And I hoped it was killing him. My phone buzzed. I checked the screen. His mother. I let it ring, then another call. His best friend. Ignored. Another. A reporter. I silenced it. I knew what they all wanted. a statement, an explanation, a reaction. But I wasn't giving them anything. I had nothing to explain. He did this to himself. A text popped up. From him. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the best of me. Him. Are you happy now? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. Me? Getting there. I took the rest of the day for myself, went to my favorite restaurant, ordered an expensive bottle of wine, took my time. I had nothing to rush home to anymore. No pretending, no waiting, no wondering. I was free. As I swirled the wine in my glass, I thought back to the last conversation we had before I walked away. The way his face twisted with rage. The way his hands clenched into fists when he realized he had lost. He had always been the one in control, the one with the upper hand. Until now. Now, I was the one pulling the strings, and he was just another casualty in my war. 2 days later, I heard from my lawyer. He had signed the final settlement, everything in my name, the house, the cars, the bank accounts. I had bled him dry. His lawyer had tried to negotiate, tried to find a loophole, but there was nothing they could do. I had planned too well. He was done. My lawyer sounded almost impressed. You don't leave survivors, do you? I smiled. No, I said. I don't. I got a call that night. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then, a minute later, a text. Him. We need to talk. I rolled my eyes, blocked the number. There was nothing left to talk about. A week passed. Then 2. The world moved on. The headlines faded. The scandal became old news. But he was still drowning. No job, no reputation, no friends. He had become a joke. And I wanted him to feel every second of it. I wanted him to wake up every morning knowing that he had no one to blame but himself. That he had built his own downfall with his own hands. That he had been outplayed. That the woman he underestimated, the woman he betrayed, had turned out to be the most dangerous opponent he had ever faced. A month later, I saw him. It wasn't planned. I was walking through the city, a coffee in one hand, shopping bags in the other, when I spotted him across the street. He looked different, thinner, his suit wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his usual arrogance gone. He saw me too. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, he crossed the street, walking toward me. I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't give him the satisfaction of thinking he still had any effect on me. When he stopped in front of me, there was no smirk, no charm, just a man who had lost everything. His voice was quiet. You really ruined me. I sipped my coffee, my expression unreadable. No, I said. You ruined yourself. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I never thought you'd do this, he muttered. I tilted my head. That's the problem, I said simply. You never thought at all. His jaw tensed. You're really not going to let this go, are you? I smiled. I already have. I stepped past him, my heels clicking against the pavement. I didn't look back, not once. Because this wasn't a victory lap. It wasn't about making sure he suffered. I had already won. And that was the only revenge I needed.